Hey, what's up, everybody? I want to welcome you to another episode of the Dreamerspro Daily Recap, where we give you a recap of all of the hot topics that we covered that day. You can catch them in their long format and also catch it fully streaming for free on Apple Podcasts. So, this has been a pretty interesting calendar year for the NBA. As you know, on opening night, there was some excitement, as there always is, with the NBA returning. And the NBA had some pretty marquee games. They had the Knicks on TV playing that night, on that night, I think, versus the Boston Celtics, if my memory serves me right. And then, of course, we had the game between the Los Angeles Lakers and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And when the season kicked off, those games drew some pretty good ratings. But the very next night, we witnessed a sharp decline in the numbers. Sharp decline. And ever since that, it's been on this trajectory where things have been going down. But nevertheless, there's some people out there that are telling you this is the greatest time ever in terms of the NBA. We even heard some former NBA players, like some former greats, actually come out and give reasons as to why they think this decline took place. I actually want to read from a front office sports report that I got here, with Shaq actually giving his take on why he believes the ratings are down. Article says NBA ratings are dipping, and one legend has a theory as to why. The NBA ratings have dropped to open the season, and one of the prevailing theories for the disinterest from fans is due to this generation's style of play. NBA legend and TNT broadcaster Shaquille O'Neal raised the issue of the NBA's declining viewership on Thursday's episode of The Big Podcast, following news that many of the league's primetime games during the first 2 weeks of the season saw double digits declines. O'Neal claimed the three-point movement has made the game repetitive. I have a theory that ratings are down because we're looking at the same thing, O'Neal said. Everybody's running the same plays. I don't mind Golden State back in the day shooting threes, but every team is not a three-point shooter. O'Neal's far from the only one who has pointed out that the three-point shooting is a problem in the NBA. The Ringer's Kirk Goldsberry has been writing about the three-point revolution for a decade, and said on an October episode of the Bill Simmons podcast that he spoke to Adam Silver in 2019 about potential changes to the three-point line. His primary proposal is simply to extend the three-point line, extend the three-point arc, so it won't be easy for the average player to knock it down. Every other league on the planet that matters, the W, college basketball, FIBA, they've all moved the line back this century. The NBA is the only one that hasn't. Goldberry said in the article, went on to say a few other things there, right? So it said that you guys can read it there in its entirety. So basically, Shaq is complaining about the threes. But we have another person in media that actually has another theory as to why things are trending in the direction that they're trending in. And that person is ESPN's own Brian Windhorst, who put out some statements where he basically is saying that the NBA is not in a good place because of the coverage from the media. So I actually want to get into his comments here. And I'm reading this from an NBA Central. It says, Brian Windhorst says the NBA media is not in a good place. NBA media right now, we're not in a great place because I think we're devaluing things that help build the league up. Like, one of the things is storytelling. Everything is too short right now. People are too focused on tweets, too focused on guys getting crossed over, guys getting dunked on, guys getting embarrassed, social media posts, not as much on storytelling, learning about players, and learning their backgrounds, what I call chronicling the season. And of course, some people under that tweet responded and agreed with him and said, you know, Brian, you have a point and all that. So what are my thoughts on all of this? I think the NBA has a bunch of problems in terms of the storytelling, style of play, and all. There are a bunch of things at play here. Number one, the general attitude of the product towards its consumers. The NBA, more than any other league, says we don't care about the fans. And you can see it from the behavior of the players. They don't care about putting on a good show at the All-Star weekends. They don't put forth any effort in the All-Star game. The star players don't even participate in the slam dunk contest. I remember when All-Star Weekend used to be a big thing. Like, you used to be really excited to watch All-Star Weekend. Now, I don't even watch it at all. I don't watch it at all. And if I'm saying that as a person that's followed the NBA for 20 years, then I know that there are a lot of people who are longtime fans of the league feel the same way. I know that. So that's the first thing. The second thing, to Shaq's point, the style of play, it is absolutely horrendous. Let me give you guys some information here. Teams are attempting around 35 threes a game, which means that let's just distill this number down for you guys so you guys can understand just how bad it is to watch. It means that on average, a team is attempting 8.7 3-point shots a quarter. If you have teams averaging 8.7 3-point attempts a quarter in a game where you're watching two teams, it means that on average, you're watching about 17.5 3-point attempts per quarter. If you look at that in a game, it means that on average, you can be watching a game where teams attempt around 70 or more threes in a game. 70 or more 3-pointers attempted. That is just not fun to watch. It is not fun to watch. I believe analytics is ruining the NBA. I really do. I heard a comment that Stephen A. Smith made on ESPN, and I was floored. He was speaking to Chris Mad Dog Russo, and Chris Mad Dog Russo was saying how horrible of a GM Daryl Morey is, and he said that he's one of the advocates for this analytics, and he said there was one game where his team lost the game, and Daryl Morey walked up to his coach, and he's like, if you look at the stats and the analytics, we actually won the game. The team lost, but according to the analytics, they won. And now they're trying to intellectualize basketball and remove the common sense out of basketball. There's a lot of dumb basketball being played as well, which I think is something else that's turn off fans. Another thing is the lack of defense. When there's no resistance in something, what's the fun in it? Imagine playing a game that's dumb easy to play. How much fun will you have in a game that's so easy to play? That's another part of it. And then also Adam Silver just allows these guys to walk all over him all day long. There are a lot of fans that wish David Stern or someone like David Stern was at the helm. It's the fact. I'm speaking from the fans' perspective. In terms of what Brian Windhorst is saying, in terms of the coverage and all of that, well, that's the way things are trending. The TikTok, Instagram and all of that. You got people coming to our shows, man, why is this video so long? Why don't you get to the point? I'm like, yo, go to TikTok. If you're looking for that microwave bubblegum content, go to TikTok. They'll give you a video in 30 seconds. I'm not in a hurry. I'm not trying to rush myself. People want things fast and they want the next thing. They want the next thing. They want the next thing. And it's the way for the NBA to engage with its fans. This is how they like content. This is how they like to consume what it is that they watch. And she also talked about storylines and all of that. That's gone away because there's storylines, but to be honest with you, the NBA's storylines now per season is just one story. That's the Lakers. That's the major storyline in an NBA season, the Lakers. LeBron James, the problems with the Lakers, and now this season, LeBron James, the problems with the Lakers, JJ Redick, and Bronny James. That's the entire NBA season for you. As a matter of fact, we put up a post on our channel that got a pretty decent amount of engagement about a day ago. You got 1,000+ likes and 500 comments, and I wrote, mark my words, we will look back at the NBA years from now and we will see that the Bronny James push will be one of the downfalls of the NBA. The league is degenerating into a clown show that promotes a lousy product. If Bronny is what you have to offer your customers for entertainment, you're in trouble. Bronny is trash even in the G League, yet he's being promoted more than All-Stars. Think of all of the other professional sports leagues and then think of the NBA. A bunch of BS. The NBA went from Magic, Bird, MJ, Kobe, LeBron to Bronny James. Bronny just scored 6 points with 5 turnovers in the G League, and he is all over social media being promoted like we're witnessing something special. Think about that. This is how low the NBA has fallen. So I ask, how exactly has LeBron pushed the sport forward? From what I can see, he's actually helping to make it worse. A lot of people agreed with me. The NBA it's just not what it used to be. Period, point blank. Not too long ago, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we put up a pretty interesting poll on our channel where we asked our audience, I'm actually looking for it, and then maybe we'll find it before we get this show to you guys. But I put up a pretty interesting poll 3 weeks ago. All right. 3 weeks ago, there was a poll that we asked our audience, which was, who's the biggest pocket watcher in sports? And I want to show it to you. In that poll, we had 5 options. Option number 1, Stephen A. Smith. Option number 2, Stephen A. Smith. Option number 3, Stephen A. Smith. Option number 4, Stephen A. Smith. And option number 5, Stephen A. Smith. Out of the 9,600 voters, 55% of the people voted for Stephen A. Smith. 8% voted for Stephen A. Smith. 15% voted for Stephen A. Smith. 9% voted for Stephen A. Smith. And 13% voted for Stephen A. Smith. What am I talking about here? You may be laughing, but there's a reason for this. We all know that Stephen A. Smith has a history of pocket watching. Stephen A. Smith going to make his money, but he also going to be watching your money to see how things can correlate, especially if you're in the same industry. He does with Shannon Sharpe, and he does it with somebody else called Pat McAfee. Now, as you guys know, Pat McAfee was brought to ESPN over a year ago, and he signed an $85 million deal to be with ESPN, right? And it made all kind of headways. Everybody was talking about it, blah, 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 blah. Pat McAfee is making all of this damn money. And there were rumors for the last 6-7 months of there being spats and issues with Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee in the background. So what happened? This morning, we were just looking for things to publish, and a pretty interesting article came across my desk. And the article says, it's from Athlon Sports, and it says, Stephen A. Smith doesn't hold back on feelings for Pat McAfee. ESPN Stephen A. Smith has never been one not to speak his mind, especially when someone says or publishes something about him he deems to be untrue. So when a recent Athlon Sports story, which can be read here, was published on Friday night, then mentioned an interview by former ESPN employee Dan Dakich, in which he stated there was growing tension between Smith and Pat McAfee, and that McAfee was viewed as the enemy at ESPN by Smith and other African Americans who work for the company. Smith sought out to set the record straight. Stephen A. Smith then wrote on his Twitter or X, or however you want to describe the platform these days. He wrote the following. He said, the more Pat McAfee succeeds, the better it is for the rest of us. How many times do I have to say this? It was true with PTI. It was true with First Take before I arrived. And it's true now. There's enough legit true things to attack, so why lie? Again, straight BS. Have a nice weekend, everyone. And then he said in a subsequent tweet, on a previous tweet, he says, peeps, normally I wouldn't waste my time, but this is a flat out lie and some straight BS. There isn't a shred of truth to this BS. I root for my teammates, not against them. And I damn sure have never encouraged my colleagues to do otherwise. So that's what Stephen A. Smith had to say. Basically saying he has no issue with Pat McAfee. It's a non-story. We should pay no attention to this. What are my thoughts on what Stephen A. Smith had to say here? I think the reason why stories like this are being ran is because of what I said at the beginning of the show. Stephen A. Smith is notorious for pocket watching. He likes to couch it and characterize it as something else, but essentially that's what he's doing. He's looking at what he's doing and he says, well, that guy just did that, so I want to do that. He does it all the time on TV. He's like, I want to get where Shannon Sharpe is and da-da-da-da. Why? Because Shannon Sharpe has he has two very successful podcasts with Club Shay Shay and Nightcap. Plus he has a gig on TV. Plus he's getting all of these sponsors. Stephen A. Smith has talked about the success that Pat McAfee has. He's talked about the success that Joe Rogan has. It's one of the primary reasons he started his own show and did his podcast and all of this, because when it's time for him to renegotiate, he wants to be paid the most. So he's been looking at what these guys have been doing and trying to model what they're doing for himself so that he could receive a major payday. So for him to say that it's total BS and yeah, it may not be that he hates these people, but does he watch them? Absolutely. Absolutely. Stephen A. Smith is an ambitious guy. Is there anything wrong with that? I don't think there's anything wrong whatsoever with being ambitious. Now he's been delving into the political arena. You see him on networks like Fox, on Fox. You see him on shows like Valuetainment and made The View, and many. He did a show with Chris Cuomo. He was sitting there with Bill O'Reilly and Mark Cuban and Dana White talking politics. He wants to get into politics. He was asked recently if there was a chance for him to run for office, president, would he run for it? He said absolutely he would run for it. So the point in all of this is Stephen A. Smith is very, very ambitious. He has lofty goals. We've heard rumors that he wants to work on late night TV. We've heard all of this. We've heard all of this. I've heard shows of him talking about the way he structured his Stephen A. Smith show. That it could be digital, it could be good for YouTube, it could be good for HBO or Amazon or one of these platforms that they decide to pick. He said all of this. So, is it conceivable that it may be possible that Stephen A. Smith may have some jealousy towards someone doing better than him at his own company in terms of their salary? Possibly. But as he said here, it's not true. I don't believe it to be true. Whatever. I don't know, right? I don't know the inner precincts of Stephen A. Smith's mind and all of that. We do know he's up for renegotiation, renewal, of his contract. We've heard rumors that he wants to get paid, I think, $20 million per annum. He wants to sign a 5-year deal, so $20 million deal or something like that. Given the fact that he's still on ESPN and he's doing well, I think he most likely will get that deal. I think that the ESPN will pay him, and if I'm being honest with you, they should. Does Stephen A. Smith deserve to get paid what he wants to get paid at ESPN? 100%. If that's what the market dictates, that's what he deserves. Period. Point blank. I'm not going to sit up there and hate on another man for making his money. Nah, if that's what you deserve, if that's what the market is saying you're worth, that's what you're worth. There's some creators that make a ton of money on sponsorships. And if an advertiser wants to pay them to book out their entire channel for a year, I don't know, pay them whatever the hell they want to pay them, 3, 4, 500,000, a million, 1.2 million, 1.5, whatever the hell they want to pay, let them make the money if that's what they're willing to pay. So I'm not in the way of anybody making their money. Everybody should do the best for themselves. I believe in capitalism to that extent. Like, do what you want to do, right? And Stephen A. Smith felt it was important enough to go out there and put out this message that they're all one team at ESPN. It's his prerogative. So